you for joining. I can see we have some folks just joining now, so I'm going to wait just a moment before I get started, but I can take some time and at least maybe do my introduction briefly. My name is Eric Fullerton. I am lead product evangelist at Aqueous, and I have a presentation that I'm kind of excited to give today. I'm really thinking, and something we've been thinking a lot about is, open source, of course, is such a great approach to building software. It's something that, obviously the Drupal community has done some incredible work building one of the largest open source communities in the world. And I have a tremendous amount of respect, obviously, for the Drupal community and for Drupal, but there's something about this concept of open and bringing some of those principles that make open source such a great way to build software and really trying to apply those to marketing. Because one of the things that we're seeing in the space today is that there are some challenges around doing marketing in a traditional way, right? We're seeing marketers every day come up against these kind of foundational challenges, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But I want to talk about open just really briefly, kind of as a concept and as an approach, right? And I think we're always trying to redefine how to do marketing better. And I think it's also probably worth, when I'm talking to folks within an open source community, that we try to redefine open a little bit. Because I think, of course, traditionally we're all thinking open source, and we know that, Drupal, and I believe this is the best open source community in the world. But what I really want to do today is expand the way we think about open to beyond open source, because what we want to do is bring in those fundamental principles of open source and bring them across lots of different facets of building digital experiences. And I'm kind of being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here with my definition on the screen, but if we actually go back to the drawing board, I literally went and looked up the definition of the word open, and that's definitely the first time I ever did that, because of course everyone knows what open means, but I found really fundamentally a lot of ideations within the word open that I think really apply to marketing, and that's really what I'm going to talk about today. We want to bring as much of the value and everything that makes open source so great and apply that to all the things and all the challenges that we're having in marketing today. So when I'm thinking about open, just for the obviously this entire DrupalCon experience, we're going to be thinking about it in the context of open source, but just bear with me for about a half an hour and try to think of as open as really meaning unlocking the value of technology for marketers, but also for everyone across the organization. And obviously we have tremendous challenges in the world today. We have essentially an entire marketplace who was essentially forced to accelerate their digital transformation to be digital first organizations overnight. And what we found is that the vast majority of people weren't ready to do that. In a pre-COVID world, only 8% say they were prepared to quote unquote be digital first. But at the same time, we know that this is something that's critically important. And in fact, nearly 3/4 of organizations are actually accelerating their digital transformation initiatives. And that means they're bringing on new technologies and tools when it comes to developing better marketing strategies and approaches. And that's a good thing, but that's also a really fundamental challenge, because if we keep approaching marketing in the traditional way that we have before, we're going to run into some of those same problems and same challenges. And it's really hard for a lot of organizations to do marketing and to do marketing well. And it's really that the requirements for engaging online, of course, are only increasing. Building great digital experience is a requirement. And in order to do this, in order to overcome some of these traditional challenges, we have to really redefine what open means. And I'm just going to go quickly over what these challenges are. And that's that, every time as an organization, we are trying to quote unquote digitally transform, or we're trying to increase our engagement, or we're bringing in new technologies or strategies into our platform to do marketing better. Each time we do this, we're either buying something or we're building something ourselves. And a lot of times that'll solve for the immediate challenge that it's designed for, right? If you want to send emails, you can purchase an email provider. If you want to build an analytics platform on top of a data lake, you can build your own BI tool and way to do all that reporting. But that oftentimes will present new and additional challenges. And sometimes we'll see that content, for example, can be locked into certain applications, although not with Drupal, so that they're only accessible to certain teams. And that can result in duplication of effort. And sometimes we'll see that data is locked into specific systems. So information maybe isn't pervasive, it's not integrated, or it's not viewable across the organization. And then every time we have kind of new systems and tools, we have to enforce kind of the training and the governance around those tools. And then they create silos in the organization of only people on specific teams being able to access certain tools. And these silos are pervasive when we talk about technology, but also very specifically when we talk about marketing. And this is why we're fundamentally, really focused on this new approach and open, which means, building for open, but also buying and thinking about open technology. And the answer for marketing, in the same way that I believe it was for technology, is that we need to kind of open up our approach to how we fundamentally do marketing. And I'm going to talk through all these different examples of how organizations can do that today. So a couple more reasons why I think this is important before I get to kind of the meat of what I want to talk through. And that's that today, the full buyer journey is moving online, right? We've seen that now the amount of content that just one person engages with before making a buyer's decision averages about 13 or sometimes more. People that are shopping, about 87% of them begin their searches on different digital channels, and about 73% are using all these different channels to actually do their shopping. And that means that content needs to not just be on a website or not just be an email, but it needs to be everywhere, because we're seeing this explosion of new channels. We're seeing folks engage across a whole host of different channels just to make one individual buying decision, whether that be in a B2C or a B2C lifecycle. So the focus is really, how do we, from a marketing perspective, make sure that we can get content to all the places that it needs to be? And the approach is really unlocking your content. And I think that's something that's really key to overcoming these new content requirements, that it be everywhere and that there be a lot of it. We know that creating content must be easier for marketers. We love Drupal. We want everyone to use Drupal, but sometimes the beginner experience isn't Drupal's strong suit, right? We want to make content creation and editing easier for marketers. And we want to be able to do that with low-code tools that can sit on top of Drupal, which can free up some of these traditional developer resources, so they can focus more on building and innovating rather than on little things like maintenance. Now, we still need developers, and we want them to own and control the experience, because in a low-code model, they can define content models and different components that can ensure that all the content is structured and discoverable, which means it can be shared and presented on multiple different channels, but also, that it's going to be reusable across all these different platforms as well, so that you can create content one time and then publish it to other channels, rather than having to deal with all these organizational silos of content, which will traditionally take place. We also want content to be more accessible. Marketers having access to libraries of pre-approved templates and presentation components. These, again, we want them to all be powered by Drupal, and then provide them with, that have those IT and development teams build those, but then marketers be able to actually access that content. So there's not always this constant back and forth between the two. And what we really want is marketing to be able to play a role in helping to build and manage digital experiences, not only with kind of more traditional marketing oriented sites, but across the entire customer lifecycle, and things like demand gen and product sites and commerce sites. Because that open approach to content is going to increase the agility of your organization, of organizations in general. And really, it's about sharing that digital workload across the organization, so that marketers can quickly make the right updates, they can create compelling content and do so more quickly than ever before. And then you can eliminate these kind of content deduplication buckets that happen, and all this rework that takes place within marketing, within IT, within content editors, designers, and of course, all of your developers as well. And when you can open up your content, it makes it easier to get customers the content that they want. And it makes it easier for them to get it on the channels that they want it. So let's talk about some examples of what can happen when you embrace this open approach to content. And one of the examples here is, I like this example just because of the pure scale of the experience. So this is actually, it's in New York, so I apologize for the non European reference, but I do think it's something that is really relevant to the topic at hand. And that's that there was the organization, the MTA, they have over 1,800 digital signs at 400 stations all across New York City. And what they needed was to centrally process all this train data and then display that content rapidly in a way that was relevant to passengers. And by being able to provide and think about, yes, they actually used open source, which is great, but they also really focused on opening up the content creation approach so that marketers and designers would be able to contribute to creating content. And they were able to power all of these digital signs, all 1,800 of them, all from using their traditional CMS, publishing their content once, and then having it be published not only on their website, but across on all these digital signs and on all these digital kiosks. And they were actually able to get their pilot completed in just under 3 months. The entire project was actually a rolling project, so it ended up taking just under a year and a half. But they were able to power all these signs, all these different locations, with all from one centralized open content infrastructure. And another good example is Bear. And Bear is someone who, again, they have this very large organization. Compliance is really important to them. They really are thinking about how they can share and distribute digital work across the organization. And they look to an open content approach, an open content model to do that. And they, of course, were using Drupal in this instance as well, which is always great. But they didn't have the Drupal expertise across their team to support what was going to be a massive project for them. They had this overarching digital transformation initiative. They were bringing hundreds of sites onto this new platform. And what they were really focused on doing is trying to do this internally within their teams. So what they did was they had their developers use the power and flexibility of Drupal. They built all these fantastic components. They built what could really be a comprehensive digital experience that was all component based. And they also provided and built out a master style guide, that core team of Drupal experts that was both in development and in IT. And then what they were able to do is share those core components and that master style guide across 18 different assembly agencies, all across the different organization. And some of them had little Drupal skills. Some of them had no Drupal development skills. And what that enabled them to do was to access and see the power of Drupal and how you can use Drupal to build really simple, great experiences, but not have to be an expert coder, an expert Drupalist. And I think this is important because the more people who can see and the more organizations who can embrace the power of Drupal means that we're going to see more organizations continue to try to use Drupal to kind of be the center point and the linchpin of their digital experience. And they were able to bring about 500 sites live in around 6 months. And they have long-term plans to build about 1,800 sites and bring them onto a new platform. And they were able to do this because they were able to use this open approach and this open content model. They were actually able to reduce their time to market by about 50%, which meant they were able to bring in some initiatives into their 2021 planning that they were previously not anticipating to get to. So that's some of the value around that open content approach. But I want to transition to talk about one of the other kind of linchpins around open and how open can apply to marketing. So we kind of covered content. I think that's something that's really important. And I imagine lots of folks online will appreciate and understand how important content is to the digital experience. But there's a little bit more to it than just content in a modern day digital experience. And that's that organizations today, there's a lot of challenges around data and around data collection and the presentation of data and how we manage data within organizations. And many consumers are rightly cautious about organizations using their data. But the underlying fact remains that consumers, and this is about 81% of them, according to this report, they want brands to understand them better. And that means they want them to know when to approach them, but that also means they want organizations to know when not to approach them. That's almost just as important. And this is really where data and the focus on finding and collecting the right customer data in the right way, protecting it appropriately, but also using that data that you collect as a way to engage. It's almost like an exchange of information. It's if I'm going to collect some level of your data and information about you, I am then kind of required really to deliver a better experience using that data. And that's the agreement that I think most consumers would say that they're willing to participate in, as long as they get that good experience. But when you're in marketing, it's really hard for marketers to gain that single view of their customer. And that's because we have all of these disconnected systems. And part of the core of this is that very few of the traditional marketing systems that we see are open source, or even allow for or enable the traditional open source value around having kind of an open architecture and an open framework to integrate with lots of different systems. In fact, many of these are purpose built not to integrate with other solutions, because these legacy systems, they want you to buy their tools and their solutions. And what happens is when this takes place, the big challenge is actually on the user, who is trying to actually parse together all this information to fulfill that agreement they talked about earlier with the consumer, to actually deliver them a good experience based on the data and the information that they're going to collect. Excuse me. So this is something that is really challenging for organizations. It's something that when I talk to our customers, when I talk to partners, when I talk to prospects, like every single time we're having this conversation about how hard it is to actually figure out and bring together all of this data. So the what and the way to kind of change this is to change the way that we think about data. Now, this does not mean open data. Open data is a thing, it is a term, and it is not what I'm advocating for here in the marketplace. This is something a little bit different. And this is really an open approach to how to unlock your data across your organization. And the ways we can do that are with some pre-built connectors to legacy systems, so that you can actually pull that information out of those systems that are traditionally not designed to do so, so that you're going to be able to aggregate consumer profile data quickly and easily without having dependencies on IT or custom builds or custom codes of all these massive data lakes, which can cause additional problems as well. And it also means kind of a framework for data and data ingestion that is very customizable. So you want to have this open approach to the amount of data and the types of data that you actually can ingest, because many systems today, when you invest in a marketing technology system, they actually won't allow you to ingest the data as you hold it or store it within your organization. You actually have to transform the different way that you would ingest and share that data, adhering to this kind of old school legacy system approach, which really is continuing to create all of these problems that we see when it comes to marketing and being able to do marketing well, and to be able to unlock that data so we can fulfill kind of our data agreement with consumers as we collect their information. And what we want to be able to do is have that, yes, that customizability is really important, but we also want to have some accessibility, right? We want to have tools that are open so that they can be configured to these unique business rules, and making sure that they can align to all those different things. But it's also making sure that you have, once you have this unified view, once you've ingested the data based on the customizable nomenclature, that the folks within your organization are actually able to view and see the insights that you gain every day. Because when you provide this clean view of data, it doesn't make sense to have it locked down in just one specific team. We want more people to be able to access that information and that data. And that means marketing teams across the organization, sure, but it's really about across your entire organization, having product teams have access to that, have commerce teams have access to that, have product management teams and engineering teams understand the types of ways that consumers are engaging with their sites, the different ways that individuals are kind of engaging and interacting with their brand, and who the types of customers are that are most likely to communicate with them in a digital way. And when you have a customizable approach, when you're able to ingest data in the right way, you're actually able to do some pretty amazing things. And one of these things that I think is really important to understanding customers is something called identity resolution. And it's a process of data standardization and cleansing that is really going to allow you to understand individuals in a one-to-one fashion. So traditionally, when you're pulling in solutions and you're pulling things in from all these different legacy systems, there's a real big challenge around having that all kind of look and be the same, and like, you know, how many deduplicate records do you have? And that's something where identity resolution is really going to be able to provide some value, because you're able to do kind of these 4-step processes you can see around standardization, cleansing, enhancing, deduping, and then append it with third parties. And when you're able to do that, you're going to be able to come much closer to, you know, fulfilling that data agreement, in the sense that you're going to be able to look at an individual consumer or customer based on the information that they've willingly agreed to deliver to you, not something that you're collecting outside of any traditional rules like GDPR, but things that they've willingly engaged and provided to you. And then be able to pull all of those records together with a really powerful engine that's going to essentially provide a single view of your customer, not just for the team that is creating email campaigns, but for the entire organization, to help understand and figure out how you can better engage with your consumers, and really, and very simply, to do better marketing. And once you're able to do that, you can see some really fantastic results. So one great example is Lululemon. And they were an organization that had a very kind of disconnected business. They have 900 stores in North America. They have all of these different, you know, online. They have, of course, they have commerce that's online. They have lots of content that's online. They do online guided yoga, and they do all these different events online. So they have all these online digital records. And then they have all of these records that they've collected from in-store. And what they were challenged with is not being able to find any way to have all the different data and all the different nomenclature, the language they use, the different ways that they were collecting and storing their data across digital and across homegrown systems and in-store systems, to actually bring that together in a comprehensive way. But they were able to work with us actually, and work with Aqueous on a kind of approach to opening up the way they thought about data and using tools to ingest data more effectively. And what they were able to do is go from about 68 million customer records from all their raw data. So all that kind of challenge I just talked about, they were able to bring in 68 million customer records. And these were all these different data sources. It was Bronto, it was JDA, it was Oracle, there was all the store and loyalty data, there were SMS data, all this information. And what they were able to do is, you know, embrace this open approach and customizable approach to collecting and ingesting data. And they were able to unify all of their online and offline systems. And once they were able to do that, they were able to get a really comprehensive view and understanding of the people who are engaging with them, not just in store, but online as well. And they were able to run some really effective marketing campaigns, because once you have better insight into your users and into your customers, you're able to run more effective marketing campaigns. And they saw significant revenue increases in terms of all their digital marketing activities. They were able to boost their website visits by providing the right different offers and communications to people who had maybe never engaged on the web before, but had oftentimes come into store. And this came in real particular handy when all their retail stores were closed over the time the past several months, and maybe some are actually starting to potentially close again. But being able to engage with the right consumers, providing them the right offers, like for example, folks who had never ever shopped online before, maybe those were folks who would have needed some type of discount or compelling event to do their first online shopping. But those who had consistently been shopping online, they didn't have to provide those same discounts to them, because at a time when their margins were razor thin, having that critical insight into their customers was really, really important. And another great example that I really like here is Wix, which is a British retailer. And it's a leading home improvement retailer in Europe. And for them, the value around this kind of opening up their approach to data and using tools that were customizable and flexible and accessible across their organization, they were really able to do some of the kind of things I talked about earlier, right? Unify their online and offline information in stores. And that's, of course, really important. But what I really like about this story is the value that it provided individually to their organization. So what was traditionally happening for them is that, you know, no one within their organization outside of a small team had visibility into someone who has, for example, I'll give you one example in a call center, right? So if someone is contacting someone in the call center and they're calling up, they had no insider visibility into anything about that consumer or customer profile. So what was actually happening is that, agents would like contact IT. They'd wait for IT to confirm whether they were part of just something as simple as a loyalty program, which is obviously pretty labor intensive. But other than that, they weren't even able to gain any other information about the user or the customer at that point as well, just kind of a simple yes or no. So what they were able to do with their open approach to data is actually really have and provide access to call center agents to the kind of core CDP view of all these different profiles, which had combined all the relevant details about each customer into one display. And they were able to quickly identify not only who was in their loyalty program, which is obviously important, but also holistically what that customer profile was. And this is something that when we think about that, I keep coming back to this concept of this data exchange and data agreement. And it's something that's critically important. If we're going to be collecting consumer data and we're going to be collecting that and storing that, and we must ensure that we're using that in a way that's going to make the experience easier and better for end users. And that's what an open approach to data can do. Now, there's one other thing that I kind of want to talk about when it comes to open data. When you have this customizable and accessible data model, and I'm going to do a little plug just for the company Aqueous that I happen to work for here, because I think this is a really great example of what happens when you have an open approach and a customizable approach to bringing in data. We were able to, we have customers, we have a product that's called Aqueous CDP, which I'm not going to talk too much about here, so don't worry. But what is really interesting is that we have all these different customers in retail, and they were dealing with some big challenges when it came to managing and handling the COVID-19 pandemic. And they were actually able to come to us to have a conversation about how we could use our open data model and open data approach to provide them with value. So what we're actually able to do, working collaboratively with some of our key customers in Europe and in the US, is build a COVID analysis dashboard. And what it really does is it's a strategic guide for marketers to understand business impacts of COVID-19 and identify all these different changes in consumer behavior. And it includes over 60 valuable reports around the overall business impacts of COVID, shifts of product preferences, understanding channel migration, understanding online buying behaviors, exploring different behaviors and retention rates. And we were, of course, one of the things we're really proud to be able to do is we offer this at absolutely no cost to any of our customers, because that was something that we found is fundamentally valuable to them. So there's a little bit of I'm personally prideful in that it was offered at no cost in a time when I think it was incredibly impactful to do so. But that's just another data point around the value of an open and customizable and accessible approach to data. I'm going to transition quickly to talk a little bit about machine learning and personalization orchestration. These are kind of the last two tenets. It's about content, it's about data, it's about machine learning and personalization. At a really high level, there's a lot we could talk about. We could probably do 10 different talks on machine learning, but at a really high level, organizations are starting to rely more and more on machine learning for execution of large-scale marketing activities. Machine learning helps you scale. Simple as that. It helps you do things that manually would be nearly impossible to do, especially when you have hundreds of thousands or millions of consumer records, and it provides insights into consumer behavior. But machine learning is often a siloed practice. What we want to be able to do is try to open up that approach to machine learning. It's something that, sometimes it's just a small team of data scientists, or maybe there's folks who are invested in machine learning within your organization. You really need to open up that value across the organization. And that means that providing a low barrier to entry for machine learning, which is really making it easier out of the box. So providing, not everyone has a data science team. Not everyone has extensive BI resources. Not everyone has a machine learning team. In fact, many folks don't. We want to be able to make sure that you can, leverage machine learning models out of the box so you don't have to build this stuff on your own, because that's the best way to see value and leverage the value of machine learning for those who don't have that expertise. And we also want adaptability, because out of the box models are great, but lots of businesses, they have all these unique aspects to the products and to the customers that they're talking to. So having an open approach to machine learning, a framework that's going to allow you, yes, to have those kind of traditional out of the box modules, but also being able to tailor algorithms to your unique business requirements is something that's going to be really important. And then the last part of this is usability. So we can't just have data scientists thinking about machine learning and being able to gain insight into the power of what we're able to identify and uncover about our users' machine learning when it comes to intent and propensity to buy. You need to be able to view that with marketing teams without having to rely on data scientists or developers to pull these custom reports or have them sit on top of a data lake. And this is kind of just a quick view of the way we think about an open approach to machine learning. And it's really around being able to understand out of the box, like I said, those things: likelihood to engage, likelihood to convert, different product and seasonal clustering information, and then kind of being next step and iterative in the process of what's the next best product, the next best solution, or when's the best time to send it. But one of the things that we work with is lots of customers who actually do have data science teams, and they have actually built their own custom machine learning models. And rather than have to throw those away, this open approach to machine learning allows them to bring those models, and they can be ingested in so that they can take and leverage all that great work that those data science teams have done, rather than have to throw it away from scratch or not be able to use some type of closed legacy tool and system. And one good example of kind of the power of machine learning is an outdoor retailer called Mooshjaw. They're one of the ones who have really embraced the open approach to machine learning. And they did not have this super extensive data science team. They did not have a machine learning team, but they had done a ton of work on clustering their different products and clustering their different users, like mountain bikers and kind of weekend warriors. And what they were able to do is kind of put these kind of custom, but like slightly custom, but really mostly out of the box machine learning models to help dictate these personas that would help dictate all of their different discount strategies, and really only offering discounts to those who would need it and require it in order to make a purchase. And that was one of the first things they were able to do. And they were able to do this in just a couple of months once they got their platform up and running, because they were able to take all the great persona work they do, and then because of the open approach, really apply it to the way that they were able to scale and gain insight. And they saw some great results in terms of the way they saw conversion rates and then a reduction in cost per acquisition. So the last piece around here is really about personalization and orchestration. And this is kind of the final prong of the way we want to try to think about opening up marketing and providing and delivering some of these open source approaches and technologies into the world and infusing them in the world of marketing, because they're going to make marketing better and easier and more effective. And I think we know that there's a requirement today to engage more effectively in more places and on more channels, right? Consumers are demanding convenience at every touch point, and organizations that are able to embrace a more effective omni-channel engagement model are more likely to be successful retaining and gaining customers, right? There's hundreds of different data points to support this reality. And the other kind of piece of this is that as much as we shy away from sharing our information, and rightly so, many times for good reason, the majority of consumers still find value in personalized, relevant experiences. 80% are more likely to purchase from an organization that offers personalized experiences compared to someone who doesn't. Now, beyond just being able to engage on multiple channels, that means you have to be able to deliver the right content to the right person in the right place. And that's really more important than it's ever been. Because if the experiences are disjointed, and if the experiences aren't relevant enough, then they're really just noise. And I think we could all agree that, especially recently, the last thing we need in our lives is more digital noise. I feel like I can think of a bunch of examples, even actually just in the past couple of weeks, where I got 10 different communications in a single day from a single brand that with messaging that was kind of all over the place. And that's because what we really focus on is this kind of execution-based approach, which is like, let's send more stuff, let's do more things, let's create more campaigns, and let's buy more ads. But that's a very closed approach, because you're not really thinking and you're not really embracing a data model that's going to provide you to actually gain the correct insight into consumers, what channels they engage on, where they'd be most likely to engage next. But it's also a siloed one. It's one where a marketing team who does personalization is maybe shooting out communications. The commerce team is sending out all their own different communications. You have the web team is doing their own thing on the website. You have different product teams that are all sending their own communications, and it creates this massive wave of noise. And that's really brought on by those siloed problems. So what we want to think about is how to open up that orchestration and personalization. And first, it has to be easier to be able to create these customer journeys and to do these personalized experiences. Marketers need to be able to empower to build these journeys and personalized experiences without having advanced coding skills. In order for more marketers to be able to do this, that's something that's going to be a requirement. But open, of course, means in this context more than that. It means flexibility, which is you want to be able to personalize not just a full block of a page or an entire email, or really even just a name in a title, because I would argue that calling someone by the right name and providing them with relevant content are very different things when it comes to personalization. But you want the flexibility to personalize any piece of content on any channel, as opposed to only being able to have specific channels or experiences that are available to be personalized. And one of the things that's so great about Drupal is the ability to collaborate and to share. We want to extend that to marketing teams. Why should every good campaign be locked down in a silo? When you're a global organization, being able to collaborate on campaign creation, duplicating successful campaigns, and then localizing them, that's going to help drive engagement across your organization, not only with your most experienced or well-funded teams, but with all those other teams that are working really hard to deliver the right experiences to the right folks. And by opening up data, by opening up machine learning, excuse me, and opening up personalization orchestration, you're going to provide that holy grail. And that's relevance at every touch point kind of being within your grasp. And we believe that open is the best way, the only way to really deliver these personalized, relevant content experiences, next best actions. And I'm going to go through a couple more examples of when you're able to open up personalization, when you're able to open up orchestration, what are the types of things you're going to be able to do? Well, Godiva, of course, is a very large, it's the leading provider of chocolate, founded in Brussels in 1926. And they are someone who has really high quality products. And they have this massive global distribution. And what they're really trying to focus on is, how do I connect the customer experience between all these brick and mortar stores and digital presence? But once I figure out kind of that approach, then what are the types of campaigns? How do I enable more folks to leverage and do these orchestrated multi-channel campaigns that have personalization? So for them, it was kind of in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, where they were able to unify all their data together, kind of like some of those stories I talked about earlier, and get that 360 view. But they also had kind of a fully fledged way to truly provide the right experience to the right user. They were able to identify their kind of boutique only buyers, and then really try to push them with the right personalized communications to online shoppers. And they were able to target their retail only buyers, but maybe not thinking about those who are, they're kind of like primarily like their best high quality products, right? They were able to communicate with them in an entirely different way. And they were able to identify some new campaigns, ones that for folks who had only purchased once in the previous 6 months. And they were able to, by unifying on all this online and offline data, that's a really great part of it. But they were also really able to geo-target these different campaigns to different regions and to different folks. Because they had this open approach, they had more collaboration and contribution to organizations that were actually to do personalization, to do multi-channel orchestration. And one last example of this, I'll do it really, really quickly. But this was an organization that was really focused on building one specific campaign at the outset. And they were providing and getting that, when they adopted this open approach to data and machine learning, they were able to understand very specifically who their best consumers were. And they were able to kind of open up their approach to a multi-channel campaign, really driving folks with online and digital communications to get them in store. And they had teams across the organization contributing to this. And just from one specific campaign, they saw excellent return, as you can see on the screen there. So I know I'm coming up on time. So in case folks do have questions, I want to leave just a couple minutes for that, because I love to talk through any more of these examples, or just kind of, like theoretically how we can do a better job. And I'd love to hear from folks how we think we can do a better job applying these core principles of open source to marketing and opening up our approach to marketing. But what the fundamental belief we think about here is that there are two kind of cores to the experience and the digital experience. And that's content and data that are at the core of the experience. They make up every single digital experience. And then machine learning can sit on top of that to help scale and manage the execution. And the orchestration, not at the top level, right? Not at the core of the experience, but the orchestration should be orchestrating the data and the content. Once you have that single view of your customer, once you're able to build and create and launch reusable content that your teams have access to. And that's going to help solve this challenge around why it's more difficult today to do marketing. There's so many tools in the marketplace, and it's really challenging and difficult to get a handle on it. There's over 8,000 different marketing solutions that are available to folks today. And we have to open up our approach the way we do marketing. We have to bring what makes open source technology so great into the way that we do marketing. That means opening up the way we create and share content, both within our own teams and then across multiple channels. We have to open up our approach, the way we're able to ingest data and to customize data, and to make sure that that data maintains protected, to meet our data agreement with consumers, to open up the approach to machine learning so that everyone at the organization is going to see the value and accessibility that's provided when you're able to gain that insight and to scale those experiences. And then, of course, we have to open up the way we do personalization, orchestration, so that multiple teams have a single view into how we're engaging with individual consumers and being able to communicate with them and contribute and collaborate to campaigns across multiple different brands, regions, teams, so that we're able to provide the right experiences to our users and really make sure that we're providing an opportunity to engage with them in a way that they want, not just the way that we want to engage with them. So with that, I will pause. I know there was a lot of conversation. I tried to make sure we talked a lot about customer stories, as well as kind of have that kind of high level approach to how open can apply to marketing. I know, folks, this is a non-traditional type of talk for a DrupalCon. So I appreciate folks who did spend some time talking with me and thinking about some of this stuff. I do think it's fundamentally important to think about how we can take all those things that are so great about open source and bring them into marketing technology today.
So we had a couple of questions coming to you, Eric. I'm conscious we've got only a little bit of time. So if anyone doesn't get their questions answered, I'd just encourage you to come to the Aqueous booth afterwards. There are people there all day.
Yep, absolutely.
First question is, there are still quite a few organizations that are not quite ready for this level of connecting and using data. Yep. What would be a good place to start with for those organizations?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great challenge. I actually would love to talk to you about this. This question could take 15 different minutes. Like, I could take 15 minutes with you on this one. So I'll be in the booth. Actually, I have another one. I think I have another one in 15 minutes. I have another presentation. But I would love to talk to you about this, because what I would like to get a sense is, what are the types of digital initiatives that you're maybe focused on today? You shouldn't do all of this at once. That is a scary, daunting process. But where are you focused on? How are you trying to engage maybe today? And once I get a little bit more information, I think I can be way more prescriptive with that decision. Or my email is eric.fullerton@aqueous.com. You can email me, and I'd love to talk to you about this as well. So I apologize. I'm not trying to push on the answer. I know I can't do it justice in a minute and a half without a little bit.
No worries. Thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the second question, sorry, was from the same person, but I'll read it out anyway. So can you share a recent why should I get this in order checklist for companies that are just starting to explore this kind of marketing?
Yeah, I think I think it's the pain points that we see consistently every single day with marketing teams. They've been the same for about 10 years in a row. And it's that I can't use the same tools as my other teams. I don't have any insight. The pain points consistently are the same. And this is why it's like, if we want to engage on not just email and not just web, we're going to have to engage on different channels, different modalities, different screens, different, this is only expanding and getting more difficult. And we can't keep doing things the same way, because we know that traditional marketing approaches are starting to, I don't want to say not work, but run into significant roadblocks because there's just too much noise. There is just too many communications being sent out. There's too many emails. There's too much digital noise that we have to knock our way through on. Again, if we want to work through a little mini checklist that can apply specifically to some of the things you're working through, I'd be happy to do that as well. But the pain points have been the same for 10, 15 years when it comes to digital marketing. And if we don't change quickly, then it's going to be a real problem when we start to have to engage, not just on 2 channels, but on 15.
Okay, thanks. So I can stop by the booth. What would be a good time for you?
I can probably do it. So let's see, I have another presentation in 15 minutes, so I can probably do it in hour 15.
All right, so that's around 4, right?
Yeah, I'm on the East Coast, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm mapping my time properly. But yes, I'll put it in my calendar.
Okay, yeah, okay, of course. Well, try and catch you up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the questions. I know we're over too, so I'll pause if there's. But either way, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone else who joined. And of course, thanks to DrupalCon for letting me share some stories about how we can bring open and an open approach to marketing and see real value for end users. So thank you very much.